Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I, Ken, read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Tonight's letter comes from Marta. Marta just starts out by saying, just want to apologize ahead of time for my English since I'm actually a native German speaker. So please let me know if something's not clearly written. I actually went through the letter in advance, and I just want to say, Marta, this has been very well written to the point that I can understand it. So I think it's okay. I haven't read it to the point where my reaction is not going to be fresh. There are some parts that I've read though, so there's that. But let's get straight into it. This one's a short and sweet one. Oh, and on that note of letter length, so some of you may have noticed the letter length for the episodes is anywhere between 500 to 2,000 words, and it's $125 if you want to pay for that. Wonderful. But if, because this does happen, you want to write something beyond 2,000 words, just contact me and let me know, and I can negotiate a rate for you for a letter to be longer. Because sometimes I'll have someone who's like, hey, I've got a letter that's longer than the limit. Can I do that? And I often say yes, but I just would like to be charged a bit more to do it because, more time, more energy, and I want to get compensated. So there is that as well too. But let's get into Marta's letter. Okay. My second breakup is 7 months ago, and I'm still devastated. I just can't understand how my favorite person changed so immensely and treated me the way he did. Overall, we had a pretty good and harmonious relationship, even if he never wanted to see me more than 4 days per week, which was fine by me. When my ex and I first met, he was very sweet, kind, a bit unsure, and he sometimes needed the confirmation that I'm happy with him. Okay, so sounds to me like he needs some reassurance. So we're already, I think, leaning into a bit of fearful avoidant territory. One time he was drunk and he told me that he was sure that I was going to leave him. Definitely a fearful avoidant. But overall, we were madly in love and happy. Around 6 months in the relationship, I felt a little shift. He became a tiny bit more distant at times. Then most times he was still the sweetest guy. Or so I thought. It was only the normal, it was just a small change to an otherwise normal life between us. After 2 years during COVID, he'd asked me to move in together with him, which I did. We were happy and fit well with each other. Pretty soon, he felt like we were too close at home. We had between us, we had 3 bedrooms in our apartment and spent most of the time in different rooms. During our time living together, he had days where he was moody, distant, and then again, there'd be other days where he was loving and sweet towards me, but I thought that was just the way that he is. Oh no, Marta. I will analyze all of this very soon for you. Since your letter is a little bit on the short side, I'll reflect back on this a little bit later and share with you my thoughts and feelings on this guy's behavior because it's very classically fearful avoidant. Anyways, around 1 year later, he told my cousin that he wants to marry me. And that's when the shit hit the fan. Can I just say this is so cute? Marta's put a little smiley face emoji to that sentence to really offset the abrupt surprise of her partner's behavior. Apparently, he couldn't eat anymore. He had panic attacks. He felt trapped, even if I did nothing to cause it. That's what he said. I moved out for a week to give him space. During this time, he was very cold with me. I felt so bad I didn't recognize him anymore. When I returned home, he told me that he does not want to lose me. He was loving and cuddly. I was very hurt because of the previous cold behavior, so I was careful with my heart and less cuddly towards him, which made him sad and insecure. He started therapy since he thought he had a psychological problem. Okay, before we talk about the psychological problem from in terms of like what happened between Marta, her partner, the therapist, I want to just provide my own psychological assessment of what's going on. Okay, so this guy, let's call him, what's a good German name? Let's call him, I want to say Hulkenberg because I played Metaphor Re Fantasio lately, but that's not really classically Deutsch. Um, Let me think. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll just say, let's call him Scott for now. Not German at all. But anyways, we'll call him Scott. Actually, no, we'll call him Henry. We'll call him Henry. So Henry is experiencing a lot of relationship OCD sort of symptoms, and they're pretty big for him, where he's really displaying a lot of those fears of loss and abandonment, fear of intimacy and closeness. So I think this would be very, very scary if you're dating someone like this and you didn't know what was going on, because he actually sounds like, Henry could be a bit of a sweetheart. Henry sounds like he could actually be a very, very sweet guy where, he's passionate. He's also telling you that he's worried about losing you. This is a man who's apparently sounding quite vulnerable. He's sounding like, he really wants to make things work with you. You both moved in together after COVID. But then, even though he's telling you that he's worried about you leaving him, he also has these moments where when you're close, he wants to push you away. He doesn't want you sleeping in the same room together. You're only to see each other once every 4 days. So this is confusing as heck for you, Marta. Like, it'd be confusing for anyone, to be honest, to be on the receiving end of this stuff. So let's talk about how relationship obsessive compulsive disorder might influence Henry's behavior. So, for someone like Henry, he might have a moment where he is really scared of losing this relationship. A lot of fearful avoidance, as we know, have many wounds: the betrayal wound, lots of shame, feeling defective, fears of intimacy. But with their fear of abandonment, it's a little bit different to how an anxious attacher has a fear of abandonment, in that people who are fearful avoidant fear loss, like the end of things. They don't believe that they have the capacity to deal with the emotional overwhelm of something ending, of a, a loved one dying, or a illness that, makes them feel like, oh shit, this is related to death. These individuals often have a very difficult time navigating finality, ending, which is why this behavior can motivate not only the anxious moments they have where they're seeking a lot of reassurance and they're wanting to make everything work with their partner, but it can also influence the boomeranging sort of stuff that happens once they break up with you, because at the same time, they may not want to lose you from time to time. Not every fearful avoidant will necessarily act on this, but I think the more anxiously inclined fearful avoidants are probably more prone to this sort of stuff. And with regards to being someone like this, you're very hyper vigilant for any sign of betrayal or any sign that your partner might leave. You want to get ahead of it so that way it doesn't hurt you. You're basically afraid of uncomfortable emotions, right? You are quite literally someone who is so frightened of feeling bad in relation to perceived feelings of grief, shock, loss. And this is what can cause a lot of fearful avoidance to act very erratically, both in the beginning of these situationships and relationships, as well as during the end when they may be, coming back around doing one of their boomerang cycles, right? So there can be a bit of that going on every now and then too. This is also partly what influences their, wanting to have their cake and eat it too mentality. Like when they break up with you, they may still want to try and be friends, not to lose you and the connection they have with you, right? So there is a bit of that. And another thing I also should say to tell you about fearful avoidance is, and I want to try and just express this more as a fact, not as a condemnation to fearful avoidance. To anyone listening to this, if your reaction is, that's fucking selfish, I don't like them, fine, have at it. But this is just the way it is. For a lot of fearful avoidants who've grown up with a lot of trauma, they are in survival mode. They have often admitted that they are very selfishly looking out for their needs. So even when they say things like, I miss you, I want to be with you, I want to make things work, this is usually coming from a very selfish part of them because they're running on empty, meaning that emotionally and internally, they don't feel good at all about themselves. And they are coming from a place of just survival where instinctively they need to get their needs met by any means necessary. And as a consequence, this can characterize their very selfish looking behavior because it makes you feel like you're being used. And in a way, you kind of are. These individuals often aren't doing this from a place of maliciousness. It's more the fact that they're just so dysregulated that they're looking to get their needs met because they don't believe they can get it themselves. So it makes you feel like you're being used. It's almost like you're a substance giving them a fix until they back away again. So it's a pretty awful experience to be on the receiving end of. It's awful for the fearful avoidance who go through this. But once again, as I always say, just because this is going on, it is not an excuse. You need to go to work on this stuff. And if anyone here is a fearful avoidant who identifies this in themselves, highly recommend checking out the account for Love We Heal and also looking at the content creator Alex's course. I'm currently doing it at the moment. It's all about healing relationship obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm partway through. It's really good. But yeah, I highly recommend you check it out because internal family systems therapy is a great way to work through this. But anyways, let's continue on with Marta's letter because I really want to get into how therapy went for the three of them, including the therapist. Okay, so Henry went to therapy for 4 months and soon he felt better and was happier again. He told me that everything is good again. We began planning to start a family, rented a new, bigger apartment, but unfortunately, 1 month before we moved into our new flat, he broke up with me. First, he told me that he loved me, but then he said he was not in love enough and he was not sure if he could handle children since he doesn't want to lose his freedom. He told me during the breakup that my waist was too big, which he suddenly didn't like. I lost a lot of weight since we met, so it's not like I was looking particularly overweight at the time that he made that comment. And at the same time, he said all he wants to do right now was to hug me. We broke up and I moved out, and he always stayed in contact and texted me. Yeah, okay. This is a great time to say, firstly, Marta, I am so sorry that he said that to you because that's terrible. It's not okay that he said that. And I can imagine how, I think particularly because many people, particularly women, I think have very understandable sensitivities. In fact, I actually say it's not just a women thing. I think a lot of us, every human being, has very understandable sensitivities to our appearance. We don't like to be told, that we look chubby and getting fat shamed. Like it's just not appropriate behavior, right? So I think for him to say that when he's an intimate partner of yours, you really trust him. As you've mentioned, Marta, this is a guy who, you refer to as, someone who's your favorite person. Your favorite person has basically just said to you that he doesn't like your waist being too big. So, that in my opinion, if I had a favorite person who did that to me, I'd be devastated. It'd feel like, I'd been slapped in the face emotionally. And so, no, I just think that's not okay. I want to take a little moment to explain what I think actually happened here, again, from the lens of relationship OCD. Not to excuse the behavior, but just to explain how this can happen for a lot of fearful avoidance. Dismissives can do this too. So, what happens is that when the panic of a fearful avoidant keeps rising to the surface, they can have some very intrusive thoughts that come in that start doing a number of things. They start looking for excuses as to why they may be feeling such intense distress, why they're feeling such a strong gut reaction. But for many of you who may understand the mind-body connection, when the head and the belly aren't also feeling particularly good, it's quite common for that to also be, the basis for anxiety. Our gut, often can, be the organ, if you will, the series of organs, if we think of like the entire intestinal tract, that is one of the hubs of anxiety, and that just connects straight to the brain. So many avoidant attachers mistakenly believe that's my gut, it's my intuition. It's like, no. Unfortunately, that is not your intuition, it's your panic. And some of their intrusive thoughts could literally be, maybe you're not actually attracted to your partner. What if, your partner is actually someone you're not in love with. Maybe, they're actually infatuated with you. Maybe, you know, this isn't actually a good relationship. And so this is where they start to allow themselves to believe those intrusive thoughts. And alongside those intrusive thoughts can be the fault finding, right? Is where they start looking at very, very inconsequential things like weight, like appearance, like, the way you live your life based on your hobbies, the food you eat, the friends you keep, the siblings you have. And they really tend to sort of allow that avoidant part of them to give them a mental out of this experience, even if it's complete bullshit. They're in so much distress and panic that all they are, and the other thing too is it's very dangerous for a lot of them because a lot of them may go on to believe a lot of the fault finding that comes up as a consequence. So, as such, even if they're saying, oh, I don't like you, I don't like that, blah, 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 they may not actually be truly, you know, they may not truly believe what they're saying to you. They may go on to regret what they said. They may go on to fully believe what they said as a way of, avoiding the feelings of guilt and shame. Because as I said before, a lot of these individuals are so frightened of feeling some of these adverse emotions because it doesn't feel safe for their system to feel it. So to me, when I hear this, it just makes me think, yeah, this is sounding like classic relationship OCD, fear of intimacy for Henry. All right, let's continue. After 3 months, he came back, boomeranging. He wanted to try it again and start couple therapy. He told me he missed me and he cannot make it work without me, and he wants me more than anyone else. He wants me so badly in his life, and that there is no reason why our relationship should not work out. So, on one hand, I think this is absolutely how he's feeling, but I think this is also being provoked by his fear of loss and also probably out of his desire to reconnect with Marta. Like to me, I think his feelings are genuine, but I also think it's coming from a very selfish place because, like I said earlier when I was describing the fear of loss, I think this is largely motivated by him looking to get his needs met, without thinking about how his behavior is impacting Marta. And I should say on this note, fearful avoidance, generally, when they're especially when they're that severe, when they're experiencing relationship OCD, they're not thinking about anyone else because it's very much the case of if the plane goes down, they're putting the oxygen mask on themselves instead of their partner or their kids, meaning that this feels like life and death for a lot of them. And they're in absolute survival mode to get their needs met. Once again, it's not okay. They need work on themselves because this really damages and fucks over their partner. All right. So we went to therapy once, but the therapist told us that it was a him problem, not an us problem. So I was left out. I tried to find out what they were talking about, but I got very little information. According to the therapist, we tried to live together again so my ex could find his balance between closeness and freedom. Soon, after 5 times, my ex decided that the therapist cannot help him anymore. Okay, so presumably the ex saw Henry kept seeing the therapist for 5 sessions and he decided that, he couldn't be helped anymore. He didn't do the homework the therapist gave him, which was all about journaling his feelings. Oh, Jesus. He was cold and closed up towards me. Again, he was not sure if he loved me enough. He had a bad feeling to start a future with me. I asked him many times where the problem was. He told me that our relationship is what he wants, and I am almost the person he was looking for, but now something is missing. There you go. That's that fear of intimacy part coming in again and fault finding. He just did not know what he wants. Long story short, he declared that he probably never loved me at all, and we broke up again. Yeah, that's another intrusive thought. I reckon he had another intrusive thought that he believed, and this time it was harder than ever to, not challenge that. And I've heard so many people like you, Marta, who've been told the second time round by their favorite person, by their Henry, that, oh yeah, I probably just never loved you. This is almost like confirmation bias for a lot of avoidance, is they believe, yeah, I gave it another go and clearly we weren't meant to be together because we weren't compatible. And it's like, no, it's your fear of intimacy. So, yeah, it's not actually Marta's fault, and it's not a case that he never loved her. I think he absolutely did have strong feelings for her, but his fear was absolutely greater. Also, for those of you who may not be aware of this, journaling can be deeply, deeply triggering for a lot of people. I find it quite I'd say it can be confronting at times, but for Henry, it may have been so confronting that as an exercise, he just couldn't do it. It may not even be a case that he, didn't want to do it or he didn't try. It may be a case that it was just way too confronting for him. All right. Let's conclude Marta's letter. She says, I lost 5 years of my life. I thought we were building a life together. I'm 35 years old and must start over again. I trusted him in our relationship with all my heart. No one saw this end coming. Everyone, also his family and his friends, are so surprised, shocked, and confused. I have never been so disappointed by anyone before. He's now looking for someone like me to have a relationship that we had, but he doesn't want it with me because apparently I am not the one. Marta, I just want to say, I know today's letter was a short one, but I am so sorry that you've gone through this experience. You know, when you're, I think also when you're 35 and if you have like a timeline in your head thinking, you know, we're going to make this work, we're going to get married, we're going to have kids, etc. It's one of those things where this can absolutely devastate you. You were about to move in with this guy. You'd also, he came back declaring that, we're going to make this work. So you would have probably trusted that everything was going to work out, right? And it's so unfair that he's done this to you, especially considering the fact that you have, you know, been so agreeable to try and work on this with him. You gone to couples therapy, which by the way, he offered to do with you. And the fact that he even offered that, that's a very appealing offer, I've got to say. Like, I mean, who wouldn't want to hear that if they had their Henry come back and say, we can make it work by any means necessary? Very emphatic. But I have to say, in my personal experience, anyone who's coming on that hard and that emphatically, I'm like, this is being driven by intense emotion, which is not necessarily logic. So something tells me this is not probably in my best interest. A skill I had to learn the hard way. But, this is absolutely so sad for you, Marta. I do feel sorry for Henry for struggling what he's going through. but it's eclipsed by the pain he's put you through. I can still feel sorry for him whilst also saying, and what he did to you was fucking disgusting. I am so sorry about how, he's behaved and also how you're left with the death of this relationship. It's just so sad and so unfair, especially now you're at a point where you probably feel like you have to rebuild everything. Not okay. I'm so sorry too that it's been 7 months since breakup and you're also still grieving this. A very common thing for a lot of people. This kind of grief, unfortunately, takes a while. My experience was a very short time. It took me 6 months to really get over the worst of it, probably 2 years to clean out the remaining crap. It's awful to, truly recover from. Like it really rips you apart and does leave some scars that never truly fully heal. You'll get through like the worst of it. I shouldn't say I can guarantee that because I'm ethically not allowed to say that. What I mean is, even though you may find that it's an emotional scar that you carry with you, you will, I hope, through time, effort, if you choose therapy, however you choose to go about your healing, you find ways to make sure that it doesn't sting when you mentally rub against that scar, so to speak. So, yeah, just want to round out here and say, Marta, thank you for sharing your letter with me. Again, I'm really sorry. I feel like the last three letters, including this one, I've actually been very sorry for everyone involved. Again, more for the person, on the receiving end of this. I feel like a lot of these avoidant attachers that I've been reading from have definitely not been, malicious, having raging personality issues from the sounds of it. It really just sounds to me like, these individuals have just been so dysregulated and need so much work on themselves as well, too. It's just depressing as hell. But I have faith that, you, Marta, can definitely move forward from this too. I might do some content down the line talking about what healing, what healing feels like and what it can look like post all of this too, because it can be divine. Anyways, thank you everyone who listened to today's episode. I hope you got something out of it. Feel free to leave us a review if you found it validating and supportful to you. And like I said at the beginning of this letter reading, if you're someone with a lengthy letter and you want to negotiate me in terms of like reading it out, I can happily adjust the price, and see if that works for you. And lucky, lucky last, one of our letter writers asked if they could have a particular colleague read the letter out with me. And I'm so okay with that. If you like Megan, Amy, Catherine, Laura, Tawny to join for a letter reading, and Cody, who a lot of you may know on social media, um, if you want any of us to read any of this stuff out, please let us know. I might even try and get Mike to talk about stuff as well too. You might have seen him on my socials as well because he's fabulous. So yeah, that's it, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to reading out the next letter soon.